Podcast on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and today my guest is director Robin Pront, and we are talking about his brand new film, The Silencing. Welcome to the show, Robin.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and you're calling from Belgium, so the time difference there is considerable from we're here in California.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you staying up and being on the show. This film was really, really interesting. I loved the way that you filmed it, the cinematography and the lighting and the colors that you chose, the color palette. Fascinating film. And it stars Nikolaj Coster-Waldau. From those who are big Game of Thrones fans, they'll recognize his name. And Annabelle Wallis, who seems like she's in everything right now. Every time I turn on a new movie or television, there she is. So she's really doing quite a bit right now. Tell us a little bit, just so the audience knows, what the synopsis of this film is, The Silencing.
Well, it's a crime thriller about a reformed hunter, played by Nikolaj, who lost his daughter several years ago, and now is basically drinking himself to death while he's residing in the woods. But then he's tracking a serial killer who might or might not be the kidnapper of his daughter. So that's the basic synopsis, and it becomes this cat and mouse game of the hunter becomes the hunted and all that good stuff.
That makes it really fascinating. And Annabelle Wallis, her character is?
She's the sheriff, Alice Gustafson, and she is, she's playing a woman in a man's world, which is always interesting, especially in those kind of small town stories. And she goes out on the look for this killer, but she has to fight her own demons, she had a brother played by Hero Fine-Stiffen, who she left when she went to college, and now she came back to her hometown to make amends, but everything doesn't go according to plan, of course.
No, and what I loved about this film is because it keeps you guessing throughout the entire film. You have no idea. I mean, you know, sometimes you don't know who's the good guy and the bad guy throughout, even the sheriff. At times you're kind of like, well, wait a minute. And that's what makes it interesting, you know, because she's not a cookie cutter character. There's multiple levels to her, and that makes it sort of fascinating and interesting because, you think, oh, she's the female heroine and she's the sheriff and she's a good guy, but she's got her other parts of her. There's dark and light to these characters, as well as the character that Nikolaj Coster-Waldau plays too. So that makes it fascinating, and it does. It keeps you, you think it's going to go one direction and you're headed in that direction, and all of a sudden, you're twisted around and you're going into a different direction, which is what I always love about movies, when they keep you guessing and it's not the same cookie cutter. So you worked extensively with the writer, Mika Ranum, is that his name?
I think it's Micah, but don't quote me on that, Micah. But I'm pretty sure it's
okay. All right, I'll go with what you say, Micah. So you worked closely with him on this. What attracted you to this script? What was it about it that attracted you? And how did you work with Mika?
Well, a lot of the things that you mentioned, a lot of the things that you just mentioned, it was a very morally ambiguous, all the characters, they're not good or bad, they're somewhere in between, and that's something I always gravitate to, it's a real anti-hero, Nikolaj's character, and that's something I really like, and the thing that you mentioned also about, it keeps you guessing the script. I really had a blast reading it, and I could only imagine what it must have been like to actually shoot this. Those are the kind of things that, just all these small town crime thriller stories. You know, I just love those kind of films. So it was just an honor to be able to make one. So yeah, and just working with the cast, with the wonderful cast as well. You know, just a big challenge for me. I've only done one film in Belgium, and it was just a cool thing for me to do, to work with these big name actors. You know, I like to challenge myself. And then from the perspective of working with Micah, he was just really collaborative. You know, some writers are sometimes rightfully so very protective of their own screenplays, but he was still protective, but he was very much open to my feedback. So when I wanted to change something, and he was, if he thought it was a good idea, then he was very much open, to maybe write a new scene and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a great collaboration.
Was there a lot of rewriting while you were filming it, or was there more, or was it pretty much when you started filming, the script was completely intact the way you wanted it to be?
It's always, that's very different here. When you work in the U.S., you always have stuff happening on set. You can't make a scene and you have to change it to a different location. Or Nikolaj has an idea for a scene, and then it goes a little bit like that. It's a very collaborative process. And as a director, you have to steer clear in the right direction, but you have to be open and susceptible to changing things. So it was an ongoing process, which was kind of stressy for me, I'll admit.
Was it? I can only imagine. Where did you film this?
This movie was shot in Ontario, Canada, up north in a wonderful town called Sudbury. It's a pretty bleak place, I'll be honest. It's an old mining town, and there's a lot of industry in the city center. But which was perfect for this film, We really introduced the town as a character into the film, But so that was great. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was Canada when I was looking at it. I thought, this looks like it could be Canada. There's so many films being filmed in Canada. There always have been. So you get that. When you look at films, as many films as I watch all the time, you begin to sort of recognize, where something might be filmed. So when did you film this, and how long was your shoot on this film?
We shot for approximately, I think, 24, 25 days, with second unit stuff, or splinter units, as I have to call it. And then we did I think 6 weeks of hard prep and then a couple of weeks of soft prep. And
so this was filmed prior to, obviously, to everything shutting down, production shutting down.
Yeah. This was shot over a year ago, actually, and we were supposed to have the premiere in Southwest in Texas, but yeah, then COVID happened, and so now the movie's been released in August, when the whole world's completely different, So it's a weird time, but it's interesting to see a movie. The movie gets a lot of attention because there's not a lot of movies, coming out this time of year. It's just normally this is blockbuster season with all those big movies coming out, but now you have to go watch my movie.
Which, it has that big blockbuster feel, not quite like a Marvel comic book blockbuster feel, but certainly, it's a major film. And, I think there's been, with everything that's going on in the world, obviously with COVID, I think there's advantages and I think there's been advantages for filmmakers. I think exactly what you're just saying. That lots of films are going directly on streaming, video on demand, which this film is, and on digital. And it's finding audiences because everybody's looking for something new to watch. And it's been interesting to watch that unfold over the last 5 months. Have you found that to be true too in your country?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I mean, I don't know how it's with you guys, but here, the whole country is completely flatlined. There's the movie theaters didn't open till a couple of weeks ago, and they're only playing. I think Inception is playing again right now. So it's just it's weird times, but just my movie's number one on iTunes in America right now, which is great, So I'm just I'm happy with it, but it's, of course, I'm a little bit worried for me from a personal perspective that movie theaters will really suffer from this. And all my local movie theaters, they were already suffering before COVID. So I really hope they can stay open after COVID, when COVID's done, So that's, yeah.
I hope so too. I really do, because we need the independent film theaters that play these kinds of movies, because of, we just need them, and I love it. Well, the show is dedicated to independent films and documentaries, so they need a place to, a home in order to play. And I always have said over and over again, everybody's listened to the show through the years knows that I believe all movies should be seen on the big movie screen and have that experience. We don't have any movie theaters open at all. So at least you have some opening over there. Yeah, no, they're not opening. They're even fighting on the East Coast. There's just nothing open. At least where I am, there's nothing here, and I don't think very much anywhere at all around the country. So I know Tenet was supposed to be the big Unhinged with Russell Crowe, I think, has opened it. Maybe there's some places across the country that are open, but not very many. So that's one of the movies that was rolling out first, and then Tenet afterwards, and that keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. But I think they are in Europe. They have opened more theaters and are playing some of those films, or they're still pushing back the opening date. I did read that Tenet was going to open in Europe before it was going to open in the U.S., and they didn't want anybody to give away the secrets of that film. So it's an interesting time in this industry. It really is an interesting time. How did you attract such big names, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau and Annabelle Wallis, to this film? Since this is your first English-speaking film, correct?
Yeah. So Nikolaj was already attached to the project before I was, so it was different. He cast me instead of I cast him, so that was different. And then I showed him my film, my first film that I did here in Belgium called The Ardennes, which he really liked. And from then on, it was. When we have Nikolaj, then we reached out to Annabelle, who really liked the script. I got a little chat with her, and when you got those two big names attached to the film, everything's easier. It's just, it's like in a restaurant. When the restaurant's full with people, people go to the restaurant. So it's basically So it was basically like that, and then So we got a great cast, and I have to give credit to my producer Sybil, who did everything possible to make it work with the cast, and so it was just great. I think just a combination of things, the script. I think they believed in my talent for my first film, all that stuff. Yeah.
Did you go actively seeking this to direct this film, or was it presented to you as a project for you to direct?
Well, it's never like, at least I'm not in a situation where they just offer me exclusive deals or something like that. But I felt like I was the right guy for the job, and I tried to convince them of that. And they went with me. So I still have to, audition a little bit, say how do you see the movie and what you would like to do with it and all this stuff. So, yeah.
I was wondering what the process was like for, directors who are, early in their careers, what that is, if it's similar to what actors and actresses have to go through and do an audition process also, that's kind of...
You talk to the producers and the people with the money, and you tell them, how you see the film, and they have to be confident in your vision, and then you have to be a little bit lucky. And then, that's how it works. But I was used to that from directing commercials, so it's always like that. You just have to be able to sell yourself a little bit.
Yes, like anything. Like anything in life. I think if you want to pursue it, you have to sell yourself a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about the color palette that you used in this, because it was very interesting, the juxtaposition of the colors that you used. So let's talk a little bit about that and why you chose the colors that you did.
Yeah, it's something I did in my previous film as well, because I have a tendency to make very bleak movies that, and, just a little bit on the darker side. But I don't like films that are just gray or, there are exceptions, of course. But, I always like to work with colors within the darkness, so I feel and the image really comes to life for me. I just love toying with that. So I chose Manu Dacos. He's a great cinematographer, and I saw his previous work, which I thought was amazing. And he was the right guy for the job. And we talked a lot about this, just getting a lot of color into the movie. Like if you see Nikolaj, he wears that orange hunting jacket. That's something that I really had to convince Nikolaj of wearing, because at first glance, it's really present, It's like, he said, I look like a snowboarder. And I said, no, it's going to work. It's going to work. In the grading, we get a little bit down and all that. So that's, it's sometimes it's risky, because a lot of the times it's just easier, if you go with a sober palette, But with colors, it's always a little bit risky because you might be on set and look through the monitor and you're like, oh no, that's too much. So it's, but I just love toying with it. It's fun. You have to challenge yourself every day on set.
That's what makes it interesting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So and some of this, the cinematography is lovely and wonderful, but you're right. It's a lot of dark in this film. But you did shoulder camera in some of the scenes, and then you used a static camera to compose some of the shots. So talk a little bit about that. Why you use different types of cameras on this film, and what you were trying to achieve with that camera work.
Yeah. So the initial plan was do everything controlled with everything that doesn't have to do with Nikolaj's character. Just make it very much, slow shots. That really creep up on you. And then with Nikolaj, I wanted to be a little bit more rough around the edges. Go up close, shoulder camera, just to have a contrast. But then, and that's how we kind of jived around the film. Just always with that in mind. That everything with Nikolaj would be up close, except for the wide shots, because I really wanted to create this. See him like a small figure inside the vastness of the wild. So that was always the idea. So, but I try to do it coherently, but it's not always easy because sometimes you're pushing for time and sometimes shoulder camera is a little bit faster. So I try to do it as much as I can, but it didn't work out 100%. It worked out 95%, but I'm still happy with it.
Well, it certainly gave the film a very distinct visual style, the way that you did that. Again, it's interesting. Again, the colors that you use, the different cameras that you shot it with makes it a really interesting, intriguing film to watch. This is a story about redemption. You want to talk a little bit about that and why? Because it seems like this is a very personal story for you. Yeah,
one of the reasons that I gravitated towards the script was, there's alcohol abuse, which has been in my family as well, something that I connected with on a personal level. And then I have a tendency to like to go with characters who have a different moral compass than me. It's always been like that. And the things I like, things I watch, things I read, it's always the people who make decisions that I would not necessarily take in life. That's something that attracts me. And this movie, all the people take, decisions. Make decisions in their life that, you could be called questionable. And that's something that I really like. But all the characters, as you were saying, have some kind of, they get redeemed. And that's something that was important for me as well. Alice Gustafson, the character played by Annabelle Wallis, she does some stuff in this movie that sometimes I was like a little bit hesitant about, because I hope the audience would still like her, just, you don't have to, not necessarily like her, but, feel empathy with her, that was always important. And that's what Annabelle did so wonderfully, she made sure that, as an audience, you still cared for her and what she was going through. So that was very important.
Yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but that, that's again, that dark and light, none of us are one thing, in our lives. We have multiple layers, all of us. And this film certainly shows that for all of the characters actually involved in this. So it is interesting in that respect. What was the most difficult part of the shoot?
The most difficult part, I think sometimes just being in the woods, you know, and just, the climate was I had to adapt to the climate. It was like, it's like 4 seasons in a day, you know. I thought it was a song, but it's a real thing in Canada, you know. It's, it's sometimes, you know, just like, oh no, it's going to snow today. And then suddenly the sun comes out and all the mosquitoes come and I have to wear mosquito nets. And I was like, it's weird, you know. I started looking like the villain in the movie with my mosquito nets.
What time of year did you film this?
April. But it was still freezing.
Okay.
Yeah. So
you definitely get snow in April up in Canada.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was crazy. You know, just that element that I heard about it, but you don't really experience it until you really experience it, you know. So that as a global thing, that was the most difficult thing, you know. There wasn't one day that was particularly more difficult than another day. I did say, the opening scene in the movie, which I'm really happy with, was, you know, that was particularly challenging because, you know, we didn't want to do it with CG, so we did it with you have to see the movie, but you know, it's a real thing that you see in the movie, and it's not CG, but you have to bring it back after every take, and that was, you know, you lose a lot of time, you know, because we have to do it 30 minutes till we get that thing up here again and all that stuff. So that was, you know, it's always silly when you're on set and you're just waiting for 30 minutes, nothing to happen. Then you get really frustrated as a director.
Oh yes, I can imagine just sitting there. But you know, I'm so happy that you didn't use CG for that. You know, that was, you know, I think that makes the film, again, it enriches the film even more so. We've become so immune to CG, you know, all of us who watch films, and that's always surprising when you go, oh, it's always good when you don't know whether it was CG or not. But this is good that it was not. What made you decide to become a film director?
Because I'm really bad at everything else. That's the most important reason. and just, you know, I just always like to tell stories, and I love movies, and it's something I felt when I was a kid, you know, that I wasn't like Spielberg, you know, just running around with a camera when I was a kid, you know, nothing like that. I was more like Tarantino, sitting in the video store and watching movies all day, you know. I was a very lazy enthusiast, but I just love the whole structure of films and be able to create your own stories, and it's just something I love doing. It's the only thing in my life that gives me some kind of peace, unfortunately.
That's interesting, right there. It's good to have a profession that brings you that, for sure. What was the first film that inspired you?
It's a question, you know, I get asked a lot, but I have to say, my dad was a truck driver for Warner Brothers here in Europe, so we saw I saw a lot of films as a kid, and they were always, I didn't know they were, I wouldn't say bad movies, but maybe not 2 thumbs up by Roger Ebert. You know, it was like it was Steven Seagal movies, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, all that stuff. And then I saw Masters of the Universe with Dolph Lundgren, and I thought, wow, these movies are awesome. But then I saw one movie that completely changed me as a kid, because then I really knew the power of cinema, and I think that was Casino by Martin Scorsese. I just saw that, you know, when it came out, and a lot of people won't say it's his best film, but I think it's one of his best films, if not his best, because it really connects. You know, when Joe Pesci gets, you know, beaten with those baseball bats, you know, it's just one of those scenes that really, you know, it traumatized me as a kid, but in a good way, you know. It traumatized me in a way that I felt like, wow, this really, you know, hit me on an emotional level so hard, that film, that nothing else in life had done maybe before that. So I think it probably will be Casino.
It's, you know, and it is one of the classic Scorsese films, you know, so great performances in that film. So, well, Robin, it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. Everyone, go look for The Silencing. It's on demand right now. It's streaming on demand. It's on digital. You can see it everywhere, and I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful, wonderful film. And thank you. I wish you much success with it, Robin.
Thank you.
And thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever on thejanpriceshow.com and also on the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. And go to The Jan Price Show on Facebook and please like it. You can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Jan Price Show. Thank you for listening.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.